In the name of the Blessed Trinity, one holy and living God. Amen. Please be seated. Today in Mark's Gospel, we have a story of healing interrupted by another story of healing. Mark does this from time to time, and the purpose seems to be to strengthen a point, which is interesting in this case because the two stories of healing really couldn't be more different. The only thing Jairus' daughter and the woman in the crowd have in common is that they are both female. They are different ages, have different illnesses, and they don't even share the same status as women. Jairus was a leader of the synagogue, so his daughter came from a position of privilege. That's how he was able to make it through the great crowd as soon as Jesus' boat hit the shore. The women in the crowd had no such status or advocate. The text tells us that her medical condition had bankrupted her and excluded her not only from having any further health coverage, but it also excluded her from having any community. Imagine the risk the woman in the crowd took when she reached out to touch Jesus' cloak. Even if she had been of the same status of Jairus, I bet she would have done the same exact thing and stayed hidden in the crowd. She was scared to face Jesus publicly because of the shame associated with her disease, with her person. And that great crowd could have turned on her at any moment, as crowds tend to do. It is easy to imagine Jairus pleading for the life of his child. Even if you are not a parent, Jairus' behavior makes sense. You can imagine it. It is much harder to imagine why the hemorrhaging woman took her health care into her own hands and did so in such a sneaky way. It is even harder to imagine being her. Unless, of course, you are her. She is not unique. She and the unjust stigma she carries is still present with us. We don't have to imagine it. We just have to open our eyes. Scholarship identifies this woman only by her illness, by what is deemed wrong with her. This happens for a reason. You see, she represents every group of people our fearful society currently vilifies in order to keep them down. In the broadest literary sense, she is every woman. Every woman who has been treated poorly. Every person who has been treated poorly. This is important to remember in order to understand the explicit connection Mark's gospel is making between our fear of others and our lack of well-being. Mark's gospel emphasizes a message that was directed not just to the people of Israel, but to the nation of Israel. We are told that Jairus' daughter was 12 years old and the woman was hemorrhaging for 12 years. Why does it matter? Well, it doesn't. Not really, but a number was given anywhere because it represents more than a measure of time. It represents the 12 tribes of Israel, a nation on the verge of death. And the only way to be healed is to stop putting themselves first and attend to and care for the outcasts, the every women among us. We will not be whole as individuals or as a society until we are able to let go of our fears and live in faith by putting others ahead of ourselves. You have heard it said, many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. It's a clear theme with Jesus. So let's go through the story again with this insight about God and how God works. Jesus crosses the sea, and as soon as he is on shore, he is met by a great crowd. In the crowd, moving his way through, is Jairus. He is a righteous man, a leader in the synagogue, and he falls before Jesus' feet and begs repeatedly for Jesus to lay hands on his dying daughter so that she may be well and live. And Jesus agrees as they and the large crowd start to make their way toward Jairus' home. But something happens which brings them to a full stop. The power of one woman's faith met the power of Jesus' ability to heal, and both of them feel it immediately, and now they have to talk about it. So everything halts until Jesus finds the person who had touched him. Suddenly, the woman and her condition are outed, and she too falls at Jesus' feet and confesses everything. Jesus tells her that it was her faith that made her whole, and she should go now in peace. Now here is where I begin to wonder what Jairus was thinking. Here is where I differ very much from him. When our middle son was 3 months old, he had bacterial meningitis. His illness came on fast and furiously. Watching the rapid decline of my child was the single scariest thing I have ever experienced. I have held a dying baby in my arms, and I assure you no person, hemorrhaging or otherwise, was going to get between us and life-saving treatment. But Jairus didn't pace around anxiously. We have no record of him acting bitterly about the interruption in healing services. He didn't complain about having been first in line. He did not whine about being owed attention over this outsider who was clearly taking advantage of Jesus' lack of personal boundaries in order to steal Jairus' benefits for herself. Yeah, he did not do any of these things. Not even when the delay very well cost his daughter her life. I don't know about you, but I'm suddenly very uncomfortable. Suddenly, I suspect it is easier to put ourselves in the position of the hemorrhaging woman than in the position of Jairus. Because here's the thing. Jairus' great display of faith did not happen on the shore at Jesus' feet. It happened right here during this very interruption, where he waited while Jesus healed someone else. And I can tell you from personal experience that when your child is dying, it is not faith that hurls you to the ground begging Jesus for healing. It is fear. When your child is dying, you are afraid. You are desperate. And you will try anything, even prayer. In contrast, faith is when you know that no matter what happens, all shall be well. Let me repeat that. Faith is when you know that no matter what happens, all shall be well. Jairus didn't know that Jesus could resurrect the dead, but he let go of his fear and believed anyway. And it turns out that the healing of this person, this every woman who was out of line, out of money, and out of the normal workings of society, did not actually take away from the healing of Jairus' daughter or anyone else. Rather, it added to it. Because that is how God works. God is abundant. And through our love of neighbor, God will make more for us and of us all. It is in that knowledge we are called out of our fear and into faith, and ultimately into life itself. Loving our neighbor, caring for the every woman, is our path to redemption and restoration, not just as persons, but also as a people. We, dear faithful, are the healing balm Jesus offers the world. So Talitha cum. Girl, get up. Get up, my sisters and my brothers. Times are hard. Decay is all around us. There is no denying that. But we are not dead yet. We can still help stop the hemorrhaging of those who have been vilified, shamed, and cast out. And when we do, we too will be restored to wholeness, because that is how God works. That is how love works. Thanks be to God.